Welcome. Today we're looking into a place really defined by its river, Prairie du Sac, Wisconsin.
Yeah, and we've got quite a bit to draw from federal reports on the dam, local planning documents, even a fish survey. We want to give you a real sort of encyclopedia feel for the place, but make it vivid.
Exactly. And Prairie du Sac, well, you have to start with the Wisconsin River. It's a major player, officially a navigable waterway of the U.S.
And right on that river sits the Prairie du Sac hydroelectric project. It's run by Wisconsin Power and Light, a 29 megawatt facility.
29 megawatts. That's a pretty significant power generation.
Yeah.
The numbers we saw show it producing around 151,800 megawatters annually.
That's a lot of electricity. And the project itself created Lake Wisconsin, that's the reservoir behind the dam. It covers, about 9,180 acres.
Wow. And the dam structure.
Also impressive. The spillway part is just over 1,000 feet long, 1,010 feet, and it uses 41 radial gates to control the flow.
41 gates. That's complex. And it operates run of river, right? What does that mean exactly?
It basically means what flows in flows out. They've been doing it that way since '78. They aren't storing massive amounts of water and releasing it in big surges. It's more about continuous managed flow. And that's the plan going forward, too.
Okay. But running something like that on a big river must have, well, environmental aspects to consider.
Oh, absolutely. During the licensing phase, there were definitely concerns raised about the river's ecosystem.
Like what kind of things? Fish getting caught in the turbines?
Exactly. That's called entrainment. And also just fish needing to migrate upstream past the dam. That was a big topic.
So what solutions were looked at? Fish ladders, things like that.
Yeah, they discussed installing fish protection devices, building conventional fishways, even fixing up an old navigation lock so fish could use it.
And did he do any of that?
Well, no, ultimately they decided against those really expensive options. Partly cost, we're talking potentially millions for the lock fix, over $500,000 for a standard fishway. And also there were questions about how effective those would actually be for all the different types of fish in the river there. It wasn't a sure thing.
So no big structural fixes for fish passage? Does that mean they just ignore the fish?
Not at all. The operating license actually has specific requirements for enhancing aquatic life in other ways. For example, they have to develop plans to see if they can reestablish certain types of mussels upstream.
Mussels, like monkey face and fawn's foot mussels.
It really is. Shows you the level of detail. And they also have to monitor and, if needed, improve the dissolved oxygen levels in the water right below the dam.
Especially in summer.
Right, June through August, when the water is warmer and flows might be lower. Plus, they need to manage large woody debris downstream, fallen trees and logs, because that stuff creates really important habitat for fish.
Okay, so it's a more targeted ecological management approach alongside the power generation.
Exactly. Now, stepping away from the dam itself, the wider natural landscape is just huge for Prairie du Sac's identity.
The river is more than just power, then.
Definitely. It's critical habitat. Think about bald eagles. They're listed as special concern in Wisconsin, federally protected, too.
And their numbers are up since the 70s, which is great news.
It is. And the areas just south of the dam are identified as really important for them. You can just picture them there.
And beneath the surface, the geology shapes things, too.
Absolutely. You've got features like the Johnstown Outwash Plain, and the soil types vary a lot. Some soils, like the McHenry-St. Charles group, are one thing, but then you get these really wet soils, fluviquint's wet, right near the river.
And those wet soils, I assume they affect building.
Big time. Especially for things like septic systems. Some areas are too steep, others are just too wet for traditional systems to work properly. It really channels where development can easily occur.
Makes sense. And what about drinking water, groundwater?
Crucial. They draw water from the deep Cambrian sandstone aquifer and also from shallower deposits near the river. But there are potential threats to that groundwater quality.
Oh, like what?
Some are pretty common issues: older septic systems leaking, runoff from agriculture, maybe old landfills. But a major one mentioned is contamination plumes traced back to the former Badger Army ammunition plant site nearby.
Wow, that sounds serious and complicated.
It is, and there are definitely plans being worked on for remediation strategies. It might even involve creating new public water systems, which means the local towns need to work together.
So water management is this whole balancing act: river flow, groundwater, potential contamination, future needs.
You got it. And it also involves floodplains. Areas likely to flood are mapped out, and building there is heavily restricted by the county and the village.
You mentioned steep slopes earlier, too, not just flat floodplains.
Right, there are significant woodlands, often on those steeple slopes. Anything over, say, a 20% grade is generally seen as not suitable for building.
Too much risk of erosion.
Exactly. Erosion is a big concern, and it can really impact water quality downstream. Ferry Bluff is a prominent local example of those kinds of steep, scenic features.
Protecting those seems important. Are they also dealing with invasive plants in the water?
They are. They actively monitor and have plans to potentially control species like purple loosestrife and Eurasian water milfoil. Those can really take over if you let them.
Okay, so a really dynamic natural environment. How does the community actually plan its future with all this in mind?
Well, Prairie du Sac seems quite proactive. They have a joint comprehensive plan developed with Sauk City, their neighbor. A big theme is balancing growth with keeping that agricultural land and rural feel while also protecting the environment.
Where does new development tend to happen?
Historically, it kind of grew westward from the villages, but lately there's also been more interest in developing closer to the river. People like being near the water.
What does the village look like? Is it all houses?
It's a mix. You have your residential neighborhoods, of course. But Prairie du Sac also has business areas like the North Ridge Business Park and a pretty large 150-acre industrial center. Plus, you've got schools and the hospital along Sauk Prairie Road.
And looking ahead, are they expecting much more growth?
The plan projects needing over 800 acres for new development by 2040. That's quite a bit of land.
800 acres. Where would that come from?
Well, here's a key point. The projections suggest over 600 of those acres could come from converting current farmland.
That really highlights the challenge, doesn't it? Growing, but trying to hold on to that agricultural base.
Definitely. And transportation is obviously critical. Highway 12 is the backbone.
And it carries a ton of traffic, right?
Yeah.
Over 18,000 vehicles a day.
Yeah, it's the main link connecting them to Madison, the Dells, everywhere else. There are state plans to upgrade it to a freeway eventually, although a local bypass idea seems to be on hold for now.
So big highway changes potentially coming from the state. What about local roads and getting around to Prairie du Sac?
They have plans for local road reconstructions. And something else they're emphasizing is building up an off-street path network.
Like bike paths and walking trails.
Exactly. That includes the planned Great Sauk Trail, which is set to connect towards Devil's Lake State Park. That sounds like a great recreational addition.
Any other transportation assets?
There's the Sauk Prairie Airport near Highway 12. It's not huge, but it contributes over $1 million annually to the economy, locally and statewide. The plan is to keep it as a general aviation airport, serving smaller planes, not commercial flights.
And the people living there, where do they typically work? Lots of commuting.
The data shows a mix. Many work right there in Sauk City or Prairie du Sac, but yeah, a significant number commute, especially south towards Madison and other places in Dane County. Really underscores why Highway 12 is so important for residents.
Okay, so that covers planning and infrastructure.
Yeah.
What about the history? Does a place have deep roots?
It absolutely does. You can see layers of history there. Several properties are officially recognized on the state or national register of historic places. The Tripp Memorial Library and Hall in the village is one example.
Anything really stand out, historically speaking?
Just outside the village, there's the Honey Creek Swiss Rural Historic District. It's on the National Register.
Swiss. What's unique about it?
It's these amazing stone farmhouses built by Swiss immigrants. They use this very specific block and stack method with fieldstone.
Block and stack. Never heard of that.
Apparently, according to the sources, this particular construction technique is found pretty much nowhere else in the world. It's a unique architectural fingerprint right there in rural Wisconsin.
Nowhere else. That's genuinely incredible. A hidden gem.
Isn't it? Beyond that, there are also known archaeological sites like Native American burial mounds and cemeteries. They're protected by state law, though many are on private land. It's part of that deeper history of the landscape.
And what about community gathering spots today?
Well, like many towns, churches are important centers. The sources list several in Prairie du Sac, St. James Lutheran, First Presbyterian, among others. Cemeteries, too, like Sauk Prairie Cemetery and Prairie du Sac Cemetery, are noted landmarks.
And for families? Daycare and things like that.
Yep. The information mentions quite a few childcare options, both family-run and larger group centers. It even notes capacities for some, like Peekaboo Daycare. Shows those essential community supports are there.
Seems like a well-rounded community. Let's circle back to the river because the sources really emphasize recreation too.
Right, especially fishing. That Creel survey done in 2021 below the dam gives an amazing look at this.
Creel survey. So they were actually out there interviewing fishermen.
Exactly. Talking to them, counting fish, measuring effort. And the picture it paints is one of serious dedication. Anglers put in a lot of hours.
When are they fishing most intensely?
There are definite peaks. March is huge for targeting walleye and sauger, and then September sees a big effort focused on lake sturgeon.
Are they mostly in boats?
Interestingly, it shifts. From April through August, more people fish from the shore. But in those peak months, March and September, boat fishing dominates.
And the variety of fish? You mentioned that earlier.
It's astounding. Anglers in the survey reported catching 35 different species just in that section below the dam.
35. That is incredible ecological richness right there.
It really speaks to the river's health in that spot. The most common catches were things like walleye, sauger, bluegill, freshwater drum, white bass. But people were also successfully targeting big ones like lake sturgeon, channel catfish, even muskies.
Is it mostly local folks fishing?
Locals are definitely there, but non-residents make up a pretty significant chunk of the fishing effort, too. Especially people coming specifically to try and catch flathead catfish.
The survey got really granular, didn't it? Like catch rates per hour.
It did. For instance, if you were specifically targeting bluegill, the average catch rate was about 2.5 fish per hour, and for those flathead catfish, it took, on average, over 9 hours of dedicated fishing effort to land one.
Wow, over 9 hours for one fish.
Mm-hmm.
That shows some serious commitment from those anglers.
It absolutely does. The survey also noted things like anglers catching juvenile lake sturgeon sometimes, and occasionally misidentifying them as shovel-nosed sturgeon. Little details like that just enrich the picture. It's clearly a vibrant, diverse, and heavily fished spot, a major asset for the area.
So pulling it all together from these sources, we've seen Prairie du Sac through multiple lenses. There's the hydroelectric project, shaping the river, but also raising ecological questions. There's the community planning for growth, trying to balance development with nature and agriculture.
Right, and the layers of history from those unique Swiss stone houses to ancient mounds. And then there's the recreational draw, especially that incredible fishery below the dam.
It really comes across as a place deeply connected to its river, harnessing its power, managing its environment, drawing life and recreation from it. And it's clearly thinking hard about its future while respecting its past.
Facing modern challenges like groundwater quality and development pressures, but doing so with plans in place and a strong sense of its identity.
So for you listening, maybe learning about the specifics, the 41 gates on the dam, the 35 fish species, the globally unique architecture, the plans for the Great Sauk Trail, gives you a deeper sense of what makes a place like Prairie du Sac pick. It's more than just lines on a map.
Yeah, it makes you think, doesn't it? How does knowing these fine-grained details, the mussel restoration efforts, the projected acreage needed for growth, the average time it takes to catch a certain fish, change how you view the challenges and successes of a community trying to manage its resources, preserve its character, and build its future?